again, and welcome back to Her Poison Pen. I'm super excited to introduce you to the fascinating female creator, writing teacher, and therapist, Cami Ostman. She will discuss how memoir and dark fiction are similar and can serve not only readers, but also writers. I'll tell you a little bit more about Cami and her qualifications and achievements in just a few moments. But first, I'd like to share with you some brief thoughts about writing dark fiction based on the writer's own traumatic events and the emotions they stir. Traumatic events range from physical and psychological assault to acts of nature to emotional trauma. Technology and social media have added new layers of trauma to our lives. When we experience a traumatizing event, we may feel the emotions of intense fear, confusion, panic, and a sense of powerlessness. In addition, it is not uncommon for survivors of traumatic events to feel grief and guilt, even if they have no responsibility for the occurrence of the event. Works of dark fiction can, and often do, provide outlets, emotional escape valves for these emotions. Writing about personal trauma using fictional characters, settings, and even plot lines can serve to remove the writer far enough from the emotional impact of the event to allow for emotional release and the ability to make sense of the event and the surrounding situations. In addition, using fictional characters and objects as metaphors gives the writer the opportunity to get revenge, to make amends, to find justice, and ultimately to let go. For example, a story about a magical knife that slices through hapless young victims and leaves their body parts scattered over playgrounds becomes a metaphor for a nasty divorce that sliced through a writer's childhood, leaving her with haunting feelings of abandonment. In the story, a young girl manages to somehow disable the knife and remove its power. Maybe she grinds it to a fine silver powder and then melts it down to create a new tool, something used for good. Okay, maybe that's sort of hokey, but it's a rough start. It's an idea for a first draft. The point is, the writer will be able to deal with her issues of abandonment and the pain and cruelty of her parents' divorce by working through her issues in fiction. For a deeper dive into the value of memoir and personal history in the creation of works of dark fiction, we turn to our guest, Cami Ostman. Cami is an advocate for finding clarity and empowerment through storytelling. As a writing teacher and family therapist, she has guided hundreds, thousands of people through their own journeys of reinvention. Cami is the founder and director of the Narrative Project, and she's co-owner of Wayfaring Writers. She's the editor of 11 books and holds degrees in English, theater, and family therapy. Her work has been featured in Fitness Magazine, O Magazine, The Atlantic, and The Washington Post, and she regularly contributes to Adventures Northwest and Psychology Today. I've posted Cami's websites and her contact information below. And now I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Cami Ostman to Her Poison Pen. Cami Ostman, welcome. So good to see you. It's been quite a while.
Good to see you too, Jess. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thank you. And thanks so much for agreeing to come and speak with us at Her Poison Pen. You bring a unique perspective to writing, especially pulling real life stories into fiction. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. So my first question for you is, how does writing memoir, serve the writer?
Right, great question. Well, as you know, I have been a therapist for a lot of years, so I've worked with people and their stories in lots of different capacities. When I started teaching memoir and facilitating people writing their memoirs, I noticed that it was a faster trip to healing than therapy.
Hmm.
And the reason is that when somebody decides to write a memoir, they have to examine their history. They have to
Hmm.
go back into the all of the events that happened in their life and cull through them and bring shape. They have to find the themes and the threads. And that just and then of course they have to write and rewrite. So
Hmm.
it's not just the initial drafting, but the rewriting that requires it just obliges people to examine and re-examine their lives. So I've seen that memoir writers, when someone takes on that task, it's not for the faint of heart, and healing happens.
Hmm. Interesting. Do you think that through your experience that people, if they were to take their real life experience, their memoir, and try to turn it into a piece of fiction, and our viewers are really interested in dark fiction, do you think that that sort of healing would also take place?
Yeah, I think it would. I think the key thing is the examination and re-examination of themes.
Mm.
So even if you fictionalize your story, let's say you take a theme from your own life, like a trauma that happened to you when you were a child,
Mhm.
and you examine that theme through fictional characters, I think it's the same process. I mean, the process of writing is different because the content comes from a different place.
Mhm.
But that drafting and redrafting and trying to make sure that you have a thread that goes all the way through, that's going to be healing if you're examining an important theme in your life.
Mhm. Even if you're turning it into a fictional character, fictional plot line, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think even in fact with fiction, you have some leeway that you don't have in memoir.
Mhm.
You can resolve the question that you're
Mhm.
asking.
Yes.
Character can make choices that you may not have been able to make in your life.
True. That's very true. Um, on those same lines, we both know, and we all know that writing fiction or that fiction and real life, and even memoir, real life, and writing about it, are not an exact match on the page.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the things that you would tell our listeners? What should they avoid, or what should they pursue when trying to take this real life story and put it on the page in a
Mhm.
fictional
To
piece?
fictionalize it.
Mhm.
Um, I would invite people to avoid just taking the facts of their own personal life and changing details to hide, people's identity. A lot of times I'll get a memoir writer who will say, I think I need to write this as fiction. But what they mean is they want to write the story as it actually happened and
Mhm.
just change details. Well, that's not really fiction. That's just changing people's names and the details or locations. So I would really encourage people to use their imaginations, use their dreamscape, you know, take take a detail, take a theme, take a character that you want to explore and let your imagination take you where it needs to go to
Mhm.
resolve the question or bring the theme all the way to a close.
Okay. Okay. So when and I know that you've worked with people not just in memoir, but across all the genres, what are some of the common problems that people have? And what are the techniques that you use to help them get through those problems or get past those problems?
Are we talking about problems in the craft or problems psychologically as they approach the material?
I think the latter.
Okay. Well, w- when people are writing about genuine dilemmas they've faced, whether in fiction or in memoir, the psychological um, barriers that come up are around re-experiencing the pain,
Mhm.
frankly, and so as people are writing about a trauma that happened or a pickle that they were in, sometimes what happens is people start to re-experience it, and you can even have symptoms of PTSD
Mhm.
emerge. And so I actually really encourage people when they're writing memoir, if they start to experience reliving the pain, to write it in third person, so
Okay.
that they give themselves a little bit of psychological separation, and they can change it to first person in a revision, but write it as if it happened to someone else. Write it true, but write it from that third person perspective,
Mhm.
and that does seem to help a little bit.
Mhm. I think that is one of the big values for people when they're writing dark fiction, is that they get, or even when we're reading dark fiction, we get to put all those fears, we get to put them at a distance. And so we can live them, we can get stronger,
Mhm.
and we can be brave, and we can always just close the book or turn off the movie, where in real life you can't do that. So I think it's one of the values of this whole genre, this whole umbrella
Oh,
of
I
genres.
agree. I mean, you can in dark fiction, you can examine something deeply and as darkly as you darkly, I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's a word,
yeah.
as you want to go. When you're writing memoir, you've got to protect yourself from um, from the event,
Mhm,
and particularly if there was a perpetrator in the story.
mhm,
So that's a real wonderful option for someone who wants to examine the experience of being perpetrated against. Take it into fiction, you
mhm,
know, because then you actually have control of the characters.
mhm, mhm. We talked a little bit earlier before you came on about turning a fictional object into a character,
Mhm.
and that object represents an emotion, the character's emotion, the writer's emotion, say taking fear and turning it into some sort of object.
Mhm.
And we can do that in dark fiction, we can do that in fantasy and in horror. I mean, it's pretend, so we can do anything we want with it. And I think
Mhm.
it's a very healing process that
Yeah,
people go through.
I agree.
Um, can you talk a little bit more about your dream therapy work? I think that that's an important part of your practice, right?
Yes, it is. So I love it when someone brings a dream to me, because I think the subconscious is working in dreams.
Mhm.
So I'm I don't necessarily believe that dreams are predictive, although certainly know people who have a dream that predicts something in their life. But I absolutely believe that the characters in a dream, not just the characters, but all the objects in the dream,
Mhm.
represent some aspect of the self. That's a Jungian idea. So when someone brings a dream to me, they were sailing on a boat, and a whale bumped the boat. We want to take a look at the character in the dream, the boat, the whale, the water, all of the objects represent some aspect of the self or something that the self is trying to work out.
Mhm.
So, oftentimes, when people bring a dream to me in therapy and we start to look at it to find insight into, what is this person grappling with? Um, People have dreams that stop mid story, right?
Right.
Like they suddenly wake up before the whale eats them
Okay.
or whatever. And so what I like to do is I like to have people first do the examination of the objects
Mhm.
and then bring the dream to closure. Use their imagination to bring the dream to closure. Because
Okay.
all your mind, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's translatable into writing fiction, because again, something happened to you, some bad scary thing happened to you. You bring it to the page, fictionalizing it, and then you get to imagine how you might overcome that.
The ending.
situation
Hmm.
or how justice could be done or whatever.
Right, exactly. That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I'm gonna play with that, because I
Yeah.
have lots of dreams. They're vivid dreams, and I'm gonna
Right.
play with doing that. Yeah. Um, as as I've already said, you worked with thousands and thousands of writers, and something I like to ask all the women that I talk to on this channel is, what advice do you have for artists who work with words on paper or on the screen?
Hmm. I think probably my number one piece of advice is a little counterintuitive to what writers do, and it is to be in community as you write. And
Hmm.
I know you have a wonderful writing community as well. It's, I believe, important to create support and accountability,
Mhm.
especially if you're writing about dark content, because it's very easy to get partially into a project and then feel like it's just too heavy, you can't carry on, you know? But if you have a supportive community where people are invested in what you're doing and they're willing to read along with you, maybe a critique group or a writing partner, then you're more likely to keep going. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like, as you know, I'm also a runner, and when I want to reach a goal, I plaster my goal all over social media. I don't do that for accolades. I do that for accountability,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
feel the same way about writing.
Yeah, I always see your posts and I think, quite frankly, you're crazy. Some of the challenges that you give yourself, I'm like, what is her problem?
I know, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, well, you're right, and it is, I think, especially in the area of in the landscape of dark fiction, to have a group of people who are comfortable with the genre that you're working in.
Oh,
Um,
great
I
point.
I can think of a couple of instances where that hasn't been the case for me. In fact, one, I went to a retreat that you had. It was marvelous up in the mountains, just
Mhm.
fantastic retreat, met some great people. But I remember reading the first page of the book that's actually coming out in March, and people were a little bit frightened of me the rest of the weekend. So, whereas when I read or share something with my colleagues at Crystal Lake Publishing, we meet on a regular basis on Zoom, and they're all like, "Oh, cool! I love that eyeball poked out," or whatever it is.
Right.
So having people in a genre that they're comfortable with it and they understand it,
Yeah.
it's probably helpful too, having that community.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree. I agree. The other thing I would say too is that it might not be a bad idea to have a friend who's a therapist, just because,
yes.
I mean, definitely you've called me and said, okay, so what would be the psychological motivation for somebody to do X, Y, or Z? And I have other friends who write fiction. I have a friend who writes fiction who literally paid me to be the therapist for her character
Oh, wow.
so that she could
Wow.
get a deeper insight into the character's motivation.
Yeah. No, you've been amazing to me when I call up and I said, "What would somebody do if this happened?" Or "How would
Right.
they act?" or whatever. And so it's been a lot of fun and
It's
very,
fun.
very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. Get a therapist and write your
Right.
book. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with this group of women creators?
Yeah, I think I would just like to offer some encouragement that writing is a long journey. And just about the time when you feel completely sick and tired of your project, that's when you extra need the support and the accountability, and it's when you're close to being done.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's cliche to say hang in there, but actually what I would say is not just hang in there, but make a schedule for yourself. Be as concrete as you can, because you're just engaging your creativity when your fingers are on the keyboard. You need the structure around you to keep moving.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, Cam, thank you so much for joining us here at Her Poison Pen. I've put your contact information both for your therapy work and also for your book, and not for your crazy running projects, but everything else in the comments below so people can get a hold of you if they have questions. So
Great.
again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jess. Been fun.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Cami Ostman as much as I have. Cami is a great friend. She is an amazing writer. She is an excellent therapist and just an all round really neat person. Hello, little dog. Now, as we come to the end of this full moon, I just want you to remember it's time to put words on paper and stay witchy.